Right now we're looking at what the planting looks like when it's complete. Now the palm trees themselves I've done mostly manually, and all of the bush billboard objects we've done using the scatter method that we showed you in the last video. Now in this video we're going to be modeling a small detail. It's just going to be these little restaurant pavilions that we have along the water's edge. And this really becomes one of the last details that we will work on before we start the texturing process. And while we're doing the texturing in the following videos, we will also be coming back to some of the modeling tweaking, just so that we can adjust the model according to what type of texture we choose to put onto it. So let's go right ahead into one of these little items, and we're going to isolate this guy. And what we're going to do is we're going to create this little sort of tensile structure pavilion. Now, just to show you how quickly and easily it is possible to create these objects, we're going to start. Let's just have a look at, we can call this, we can just add it to the podium level, or perhaps we can make a new one. Maybe just hardscape. Let's keep it at hardscape to keep things minimally layered. So I'm going to start by creating a simple plane, and I'm going to make the size 15 by 15. And what I'm going to do then is I will just convert to editable poly, and we just want to get some subdivision going on. So we're going to select all the edges, and we'll just press. We're actually going to tessellate it. I think that'll be the best way forward. Instead of connecting individually, it'll be more difficult that way. We're going to subdivide it into 4, and then we're going to subdivide it one more time. This time let's go and do an insert, and we were just doing this process to get some more detail to it so that we can manipulate it later into this tensile structure form. Then I'm going to join these together. We're going to connect these vertices. This is all happening just as a subdivision. And what I have now is basically a subdivided form with the cross axes, and I have this middle ground here. Now if I go into the rotated perspective, I'm going to lift it up, and what I'm going to do is to manipulate this and then use the nurms toggle just to create quite a cool looking kind of tensile structure that we're going to have perched on each one of these little these island style circles here. So what we will start with, we'll raise up the corners, and we'll pull those up to about there. Then what we want to do is we want to raise the middle, and then these edges over here. Now what we're doing here is just a very, very low poly version of what the tensile structure is going to look like, and I use the same process for any type of tensile structure that I need to do. So here we're setting up the double curvature where we have the curve on the inside, and here we have the curve in the other axes. And once we're done with that, we can immediately set nurms toggle, and we can have a look at what that object looks like. Let's go down and add more iterations to it, up to 3. And now let's go and grab these vertices up here, and let's just stretch it out so that we get a more dynamic looking structure. So what I'm getting is this kind of a pavilion here. And all I'm doing is I'm manipulating 4 points at a time to get the entire curvature. So I can still fiddle around here in the middle if I want to make that look more natural. But more or less that is what I'm going for. Just a basic structure like this. Now what we can do is, if we want to make it look more realistic, is we can add some prop-up poles on the 4 sides. So we're quickly going to do that. We'll start in the elevation, and we're going to add a line. Let's start by adding a line. Let's turn this by 45 degrees, and it's just going to allow us to work exactly in line with what we're creating. I'm holding down the shift key just to make a straight line. and I'm going to sweep that. Let's use a cylinder, very low interpolation, maybe 2 steps, and align that in the middle. Let's smooth the section. We don't need to smooth the path because it's straight. And let's make this 0.08, so it's about 16 centimeters in diameter. And now in our plan view, we will need to rejoin our 2 objects, which are quite far away right now, so that's why we're hardly seeing them on the screen. So I'm just zooming out here, and I'm going to move that object back to where it should go. You can add the grid if you need to see what's going on. So if you feel like you sometimes are working on a very big scene and you're trying to move small objects together, you can go back into your front view, and just using the snap, you can snap it on to the object, let's say here in the middle. So we're going to snap it on there, and we're just going to move it vertically down. So immediately by doing that, we've snapped it onto an object, so already the 2 are touching each other. It's just a much quicker way instead of what I was doing earlier. The scene is actually far too large to create something at 0 and then move it into place, since we're dealing with a few kilometers here. So then I have this pole, and what I want to do is I want to rotate it 4 times so that it's in all 4 corners, and I will have a look at the center values for this. So again, these are very big numbers, and I will just go and move the pivot point for that to be there. So now the pivot point has been moved to have the same center as the tent structure, and in plan view we can now go and manually press E to rotate. Just go to 90 degrees, say instance, and 3 times. And now we've gone and rotated it to the 3 different corners. So there we have it. We have our simple little pavilion structure, which now becomes the last object that we've made. And what you can do is you can go and group that, and you can go and copy it all the way around. So I'm going to just create a group of that and call it pav 01. And I'm going to just instance that around. You can either you can snap onto these circles, or you can recreate the circles from scratch, anything that makes you feel like you're doing the right thing in your workflow. If these objects get really complex, then what you'd want to do, let's say you want to add a bar and you want to add a whole bunch of furniture and do different things, then if they are in fact the same, then what you can do is complete that entire object, and you can make a proxy of that entire object, and then go and copy that proxy around if you really have a good couple of thousand polys to each one of these. Here again, we will treat it as if it was a tree, like we did with the palm trees. So the same principle. Since we don't have a lot of detail to it, it is just a very simple object. We're going to leave it as a grouped item, and we'll just copy that across to all of the others over here. So that is it for the modeling, at least the rudimentary beginning part, and the other modeling will happen during the texturing phase, as we've explained. So this video has basically covered the just an overview of the planting, and we can also see now, if we look back to how the planting was done, you'll see that I added some planting to the top here, and I added a couple of plants to the platforms that we have here on the levels. So if I zoom into this, if I just zoom extents, you'll see that I had a little patch of grass, and those palm trees are sitting up there, just so we have a little oasis at the top here. So that is what we have at the moment. The next video is going to cover the texturing phase, and once we're done with that, we're going to start lighting up the scene and doing some test renders.